Let's see if I can figure this out. Good afternoon, everybody. So you heard my background, and I'm going to discuss my journey. As you heard, I'm a big nerd. I'm a big scientist, and there's not a lot of scientists that do Peace Corps. So my journey is going to be about how I transitioned from being a lab scientist, a research scientist, to now a desk scientist at the Environmental Protection Agency. One of the things about Peace Corps and all of life is you never know where your journey is going to go. You never know what crazy things are going to happen. But if you stick with it, you have a lot of fun along the way. So for me, I know that from a young age, I always wanted to be a scientist, some kind of ologist, biologist, zoologist, epidemiologist, something, anything with bugs or microorganisms. I wanted to be that person doing that thing. I watched a lot of Nova and other things growing up. So when I heard about Peace Corps from friends and family, I was like, oh, that's cool, but I'm not going to be able to do that because I have to get my bachelor's, and I have two, one in food science and one in nutritional science. And then I immediately turned around and got my master's in food science. And then I said, hey, you know what? We need that PhD because Dr. Adeeb sounds great, and I need to be Dr. Adeeb. But what I didn't realize is that after going to school from 2000 to 2008, my brain would stop working. And I would be burnt out. And if any of you are in grad school or at the end of your undergraduate career, you know how that feels. So I was in a great lab at an amazing university. I'd gotten a full fellowship. It's one of the top 4 schools in the country for my field, and I was miserable. I was having a horrible time. I realized I love science, but I don't want to be the person in the lab the whole time. I actually like people too. I want to do more than pipetting. Anybody here know what pipetting is? Yeah, you just move small volumes of liquid from one container to another, kind of like this. That's what you do all day long. Sometimes you heat it up, sometimes you swirl it around, but that's pretty much the extent of it. And I said, that's cool, and I'm pretty good at pipetting, but I actually want to make eye contact with people, look, and not just be in the lab all day long, quite literally like this, with my headphones in. Now I'm actually at my desk with my headphones in, but at least I get to email people back and forth. So I left this very amazing, very prestigious PhD program not knowing what I was going to do with my life. And I'm a very much type A planner, so that was horrible for me. What happened that was good is I was talking to one of my god sisters who's from Niger, and she said, hey, Shanta, have you ever thought about doing Peace Corps? And I said, aha, I haven't thought about it for many, many years because I was on the PhD postdoc job track, and there's no room for Peace Corps there. Postdocs don't stop and go other countries, serve for 2 years. So now that I had no plan, I said, okay, let's look into this. And when I was in that PhD program, one of the best things about it is I realized I still love science, but I like talking to people, so I don't need to be the ones doing the experiments. I need to be the person helping the scientists out. I know I'm more of a social scientist, haha, you get that? I actually like talking to people, so I'm like, I understand the science, but I also understand the human aspect, so I need to find a career that I can take 2 things that I love and bring them together. Another thing that happened is I had actually been applying to a lot of jobs, and you know, we've all been there. It was really hard. And in past, I did internships with NASA and USDA, and I knew I wanted to work for the federal government, and it is extremely hard to get a federal government job. So I knew going into Peace Corps, hey, non-competitive eligibility, ding, that's how I'll do it. So my strategy going in was, hey, let's work, let's continue Peace Corps, but let's get that non-competitive eligibility so we have preferential hiring ability. So the thing is it's not a guarantee, I promise you. It wasn't easy for me still to get my job, but at least you have the non-competitive process. That really helps. And if you see here, there's a map of Botswana. Nice little cute map. So I talked about thinking about the end and designing your service. So when you have Peace Corps service, you do a lot of training. You discussed it earlier, just like the military. One of the things I felt also was like they kind of control your life during pre-service training. That's one thing you didn't mention. They don't let you go where you want to go or do what you want to do. So it is kind of like boot camp in that way, I guess. The only thing about the Peace Corps that really sticks out in my mind different from the military is that Peace Corps, you could quit at any point in time. So to me, that's kind of the hardest thing about it, is that if you want to leave, they will send you home and you'll be home within 3 days. So if you serve your full time, it is because you want to be there. So when I was thinking about all of these factors and I was like, I really want to be here, how do I get from out of the lab and move into the office, I thought about what things I need to do. So anytime I had any training in Peace Corps, I thought about how can I use these skills for my career? Because yes, I can do it, but I do not want to be tied to the bench for the rest of my life. I needed to get out. So as Peace Corps was doing these trainings, I was thinking about this. One thing I didn't consider is that the role other Americans and other people would have in my service. I was thinking, I'll get to site, I'll be in my community, I'll be good. I didn't realize when you're in another country and they have other customs, you need Americans. You need people who understand that music or those clothes or why you really, really want cheese. It is hard to get cheese in Botswana. So Peace Corps volunteers talk about food all the time. So you need people to understand that. So I built my network, and here's some women who are really good friends of mine. One of them is American, several Botswana. One of my girlfriends now, the one in the black with the jeans, she's working on her PhD at LSU. My girlfriend in the middle, Irene, she's in Botswana. She works at USAID. They're pioneers in the women's movement that's still developing in Botswana. But that was my support network. And that was something I really needed. So we think about all the stuff we're going to do. We don't think how we're going to stay, how we're going to thrive. So I built that network, and when I was stressed, I would take the bus, 8-hour bus, to the Capitol, to Irene's house, and she would have Pinotage, which is a great red wine there, at her house for me. So all of those things you have to do, whatever it takes to finish, you need to do. So I ended up working, again, she mentioned, for the Kuru Family of Organizations, and I ended up working with 3 of those organizations. You'll see Lebo in the middle speaking with the dildo. We had health workers, and they had to do demonstrations for condom use. So if the person who's doing the demonstration isn't comfortable, how can they get the person out in the community to practice using this? So we would have people speak with it during the talks in our offices, so they would get comfortable. So Lebo's, okay, speaking into the mic all the time. So that was really fun. So you hear all the time, Peace Corps, it's the hardest job you'll ever love. It is not a lie. Let me tell you why. I first started with an organization called the Dakar Trust. Same mission as the rest of the Kuru Family of Organizations, to work with some people, but theirs was specifically for the community of Dakar. I was there for a few months. I was getting integrated into my community. I had a really great counterpart, and then funding ran out. So it's like, ooh, so we have a Peace Corps volunteer, and in Botswana, they actually place you with the organization. You're not just like placed in a community. And it's like, what do we do? Well, luckily for me, because my organization was partnered with other organizations, my counterpart didn't lose her job. She moved over to Lakoa Health, so I moved over with her. Really easy. All Peace Corps had to do was sign some paperwork. What was great about Lakoa is they do rural health stuff. They work with minority San populations. And in Botswana, they have the majority population that they say they're blacks. In some countries, you hear about the Igbo, the Zulu. Botswana, they don't really talk about that much in Botswana, even though they have 8 major tribes. But the San people, because they're a minority group, they talk about, no, I'm Kwe, no, I'm Juhasi, no, I'm Naro, and other things like that. One of the challenges also that the San face is that they're treated like a lot of First Peoples, the Native American, the Aboriginals, where they're not really respected in the country. They're really treated as second-class citizens. They don't have a lot of rights. And what's going on with them is they're also dealing with what's called forced modernization, where they can no longer be mobile. They're no longer allowed to go through the Kalahari Desert. They used to be able to be nomads, but they're saying now, the government says, no, you can't go into the Kalahari Desert and live there anymore. You have to go to these communities. So my community was founded for them. But when they lost their funding, it's like, okay, now we're at Lakoa, we're doing stuff. Lakoa actually worked with a lot of other organizations. They did stuff with rural health clinics and mobile clinics, and it was great. I was helping my counterparts. And in Botswana, the languages are Setswana and English as the national languages, but English is the language of business. So I had counterparts, they knew how to do PowerPoint and Excel, they knew how to use Word, but they just weren't confident in their English communication skills. When you think about capacity, a lot of what I did was like, you're amazing at this. I had a counterpart, Susan, and she wrote a recommendation letter for somebody, and she said, hey, Shanta, can you edit it for me? And I said, no. And she's like, oh, you're being mean to me. And I said, you can look at that letter and tell me what's wrong with it. She huffed and she looked at it and she realized it said she in the recommendation letter was for a man. She didn't need me. She just needed to build her confidence so she can really see it. So I was doing great things. And then the bad time happened. So when I was in Peace Corps service, I found out that my 90-plus-year-old grandmother had cancer. Now, I'm named after my grandmother. We're a very close family. My mother's actually right there. We lived together, and it was hard. When I got the call, I actually don't remember if it was day or night. I don't remember what was going on. All I do is I remember I grabbed clothes, I packed a bag, and I hitchhiked to the next village over because I had to go to the village where the bus was to take me to the capital. In the end, as a family, we made a decision that, guess what, I'm not gonna leave service. I'm gonna stay, even though my grandmother is going through surgery for cancer. And that was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made. Do I leave or do I stay? My grandmother is my favorite person. We are very much alike, and I love her. Do I follow my dreams and pursue it, or do I go home and support her? So when we decided as a family that I was gonna stay, it actually worked out really well. She had her surgery at 90-some years old. She did better than apparently the 45-year-old people. She had people laughing in the hospital. So that was really great. It worked out, and I didn't end up regretting it. So it was so great for me that I was able to pursue my dreams and support my family. What wasn't great is what was going on with my organization. Now, with my organization, it had different people who were running it, and I was having issues with the head of the organization. One of the things Peace Corps tells you is it's not your job to fill a personnel gap. You're supposed to build the skills. So when you leave, the skills are still there. So I'm sure you all have heard this. I had the president of my organization that was trying to get me to fill a personnel gap. Now, I had done some things by myself, but I was looking at the needs of my coworkers, and I said, okay, well, we have mastered Excel. We have mastered Word. Let's get them so they're more confident speaking to the Minister of Health, because in my community, they were doing that. They're speaking everything from 90-some-year-old ladies who only speak Naro to the Minister of Health to everyone in between. Let's build their skills. But in Botswana, it's one of those cultures where people are used to getting top-down information. So I just needed him to say, hey, work with Shanta, and then they would do it. But he wouldn't. And he started becoming very passive-aggressive with me. So it became a weird passive-aggressive work environment, and I was doing 40 hours a week. And to make it worse, we lived in the same compound. So I heard them playing music. On the weekends when I would go outside my house to wash my clothes, they would be there. I was getting no escape from these people. And I've worked with a lot of challenging personalities. I'm not a quitter, but it just got to a point where none of my tricks were working. None of my skills, none of my negotiation thing. So now I joke about it that I had a month of tears, but it was actually 2 months where every single day I cried. And it was so hard. And with my grandmother having cancer, I said, I didn't come here for this. I have amazing, wonderful counterparts that have amazing skills, and you're quite literally blocking me from helping these people. And I really didn't know what I was gonna do. But what I decided to do was to take my secondary project, and if you know anything about Peace Corps, you have your main project, but you can have your secondary project. And after dealing with them and working with Peace Corps said, hey, you can move over to your secondary project and make that your primary project, because we see it's not you, it's not that you're not trying. That is not a good fit. So then it became the easiest job. Now, I'm a scientist, but I love art. I love jewelry. Anywhere I go, I'm looking for either art or jewelry. So I started working with these amazing artists. And what's amazing about these artists is that they're doing oil paintings and stuff in the Kalahari Desert. We did some stuff with QAQC. I'm wearing some jewelry now. It's made from ostrich eggshells. So I was able to do a lot of great stuff. What's amazing about Peace Corps, with all the stuff you do, you never really know where you're gonna end up. I always said, I'm never gonna raise money for people. People don't need money. They need skills. But guess what? I was working with the art center that was already financially sustainable, and they had already had this dream. So we ended up designing and building a new display room for the art. We turned the old art room into a silkscreen printing room. They already had the silkscreen printers, but you can't do oil painting and print t-shirts in the same room. It just doesn't really work. We built a storage unit, and we did all of this stuff. And the money ended up coming in my last 3 months of service. So while most people were winding down, I was winding up. And what's great here, I want to pause on this picture in the middle, is you never know who will touch your lives. The woman in the back of me in that picture is Maudie, and that's my Botswana mommy. And a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to go to Botswana or any other country, and I have some old village lady, and that will be my mom. Not me. I had a middle-aged Afrikaner woman from South Africa, and that was my mommy, and her name was Maudie, and Maudie was my mommy, and I love her to death, and she loved me, and we did amazing things together. So you never really know what's going to happen in service. So when you come to any country, you bring yourself as an American, and everyone has all of these preconceived notions of America, and most of them are based on the media. So I really look like I'm Botswana. If I keep my mouth shut, I can pretty much go anywhere and they'll leave me alone. If they hear me talk a little bit, they'll assume I'm Namibian, South African. They'll never guess American. But based on where I lived in my shopping village, it was easier for people to know that I was American because I was there more often. So one time I was there talking to one of the people in my village, and I was asked, "Are you a thug like Tupac?" Am I? No, I'm not. And I'm really I'm like super middle class. And I was like, how do I explain middle class to people? Because they think Americans are rich. So I'm like, okay, so we're like the Cosbys, but we're not the Cosbys because we're not a doctor and a lawyer. My parents are teachers, and no, we're not rich, so I can't give you any money. So it's all of these things that you have to deal with in transition. And then another time I was with the driver, and he asked me, "Are your parents black?" And I was like, Madonna didn't adopt me. My parents are black. But what he meant was, are you first generation African in America? And I had to explain, no, there's lots of black people in Africa. One of the most challenging things I had to deal with is because I look like I'm a normal Botswana and I'm not one of the ethnic groups, people would say very racist things about the San people to me. And I had to tell them, stop what you're saying. I know that I look black, but I'm not a black person. I'm red. I'm a San person. I'm a Basawa, so do not say racist things about these people to me in my face. Don't get comfortable. So it's really interesting, all the dynamics that you have to deal with. Service ended, I had to leave, and one of the hardest parts about leaving is survivor's guilt. You have all of these projects that you've been working on, and you know what? You have to walk away, so that can be really, really hard. So after service, I had my strategy in mind. One of the things I worked on a long time was my description of service. Pretty much what it does is it says, this is all the things that this person did in service. Why that's important is because that's what you use on your resume. It's signed off by the country director. If it's not on your description of service, it's hard to tell somebody 20 years from now, no, for real, I did this in Botswana. There's no documents to back it up, and they would never be able to do that. So I worked on that. I used the Peace Corps career office, and I used my non-competitive eligibility, and I got a job at the EPA. So currently, I work with the EPA Office of Pesticide Programs as a risk manager / biologist. So pretty much what I do is I deal with the herbicides. If you use it to kill plants, whether it be homeowners or whether it be in fields, it goes through my office. So we do a lot of science stuff. But what's great is I have the really, really great nerdy scientists doing and looking at all the studies, and I get to take their reports and make it make sense. I do a lot of editing. I do a lot of things like that. One of the things you do at Peace Corps is you have to work with all these different stakeholders. We do the same thing at the EPA. We have to work with not just the big name chemical companies and not just the really loud NGOs that don't want any pesticide use. We have to work with the asparagus farmer that has a small crop. But guess what? He needs something to kill those weeds so he can grow his crop and so you can get your lovely microgreens. So we work with all those things. And also, English is a second language. In Botswana, English was one of the major languages, but just because I'm saying something to you in English doesn't mean you're understanding what I'm saying. It happens all the time here, so I have to work just like as hard in Botswana here to make sure, just because it's in English, am I communicating this? Can somebody read this label that's maybe 200 pages and understand how they're supposed to use it? So English is a second language I used in Botswana, and I use it here. Just like in Botswana, you need your team in service. You need your support system. And I have a really, really great team. And we're able to communicate, and we're working on the mission goals. And my team works with a lot of very controversial chemicals. The chemicals that are used or get put on GMO crops, and GMO is a dirty word right now, and all of these other things. So to be able to work with the team that is so wonderful and to get stuff done is great. Lastly, when it comes to things, your service belongs to you. What you want to do, you can do with it. When it comes to my path, I know I needed to get out of the lab. I know I had more to do. And I was able to figure out how to take my love for science, transition it through Peace Corps, build some skills, and to get an amazing job. One of the things I wanted in my job is I wanted a job that I can help benefit millions of people that would never ever know I exist. I wanted a job with benefits that I would be able to travel, and I have all of that. And I would never be able to handle that or never be able to have that if I hadn't done Peace Corps. And you've heard my stories. You've heard the crazy stuff I've dealt with, but just like with me, you can deal with the crazy stuff. I promise you will have troubles, but it's so worth it on the other end. Thank you.